Hello and welcome to the Ride Shotgun podcast with me, Andy Weir. I'm Chief Client Officer at Ride Shotgun. And today I'm joined by Elly Sherwin, who is CMO of Fundment. Elly, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. Delighted to be here.
Great stuff. How are you? You well?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Before we get into the main topic of today's discussion, I thought I'd just kind of ask tell us a little bit about yourself and your kind of career today. What brings you to be CMO of Fundment?
I've been within marketing and communications for the last 20 odd years. I'm showing my age here. And all that time really within financial services as well as innovation across VC, PE, technology companies, as well as banking. I spent the large majority of my career at Silicon Valley Bank as the CMO for SVB for Europe, where we had an amazing journey building that business across multiple different markets, spending time all around the world, including in China and building out the function there. So a really wide-ranging career. We then took that business, as many people will know due to the headlines, through to an acquisition by HSBC, where I then became global CMO for HSBC Innovation Banking, which was just a remarkable journey, a fantastic experience to work for a large corporate like that. And I stayed there for a couple of years, but really wanted to get my hands dirty again, but get back into really high growth mode with a business like Fundment, which is VC backed, growing really, really well, an amazing, ambitious founder. So to be back at the forefront with building a business like that is really exciting and where I want to be in this phase of my career.
Definitely. It sounds like a great opportunity. A lot of people may not have heard of Fundment. Obviously, we've been working together for a while. So, for the benefit of the pod, could you perhaps expand a little bit on who Fundment are and a bit about the business and the ambition of the business, if you like?
Yeah, sure. And that's exactly my job, right? To build a business and a brand that everybody knows. So Fundment is an investment platform built for financial advisors and advisory firms, enabling them to set up, manage and monitor their client investments on one infrastructure. So our ambition is huge, as you would expect. There's about 5.5 trillion passing between generations in the UK within the next 30 years. And, the modern infrastructures and the modern investment platforms will be those that manage that money. So our goal is for Fundment to be that platform, to be the platform that financial planners and advisory firms think of first, and really the only one that they consider seriously to build their futures on, as well as, and this is really important, being that platform that the advisors that are with us today want to stay on and never consider leaving. So it's all about that client experience, which I'm sure we'll come on to. Yeah.
Quite an exciting opportunity then. And like you say, a very ambitious business and a great time to be part of that business, I'm sure. So typically, tell me about your role on a day-to-day basis as CMO of Fundment, which is, I imagine it's changing rather rapidly with the growth ambition and the change in the business.
It is changing rapidly, and no 2 days are the same, and that's part of the fun. I think one of the brilliant things about being within a founder-led business is that you're at the coalface. You're so close to decisions. Decisions get made quickly. Yeah. You have to pivot fast, and that takes, I think, resilience and an ability to operate within, at times, an ambiguous environment. Yeah. So we are doing multiple things at the moment across the business, thinking about international expansion, how we really grow the business within the UK, how we ensure that we continue to have the best proprietary technology as well as the service and support that we're known for. And from a marketing perspective specifically, which is obviously interlinked with those commercial goals, I'm really thinking about how do we build a team with the right capabilities for the future. Yeah. So there's that long-term burn, but there's also ensuring that we're having impact in the market today, that we're being relevant and most importantly, really valuable. Yeah. and probably drive the team crazy thinking about that, and really pressure testing is what we're doing today, whether it's the bigger strategy or every tactic. Is that going to add value? Is it going to drive growth?
Yeah.
And is it going to differentiate us in the market where there's a lot of kind of generic messaging within the platform world?
Yeah. So just building on Fundment and what they do and the role of marketing essentially for a brand like Fundment. Essentially, I guess primarily it's a tech platform as you mentioned. But I'm really interested in the balance of how fintech brands, go about balancing the relationship between the tech platform, but really importantly the kind of the human connection, within the business, but really importantly with the customers. How do you where do you decide to put the weighting as far as the focus behind the platform or the focus on the service, or is it a balance really?
Yeah, so we're the only platform in the UK with completely homegrown proprietary technology. And that has to do, a fantastic job. But really, in a way, it's the hygiene factor. And I think what you find is many digital first brands think of a slick interface as trust at times, and that you've earned the trust through that. But actually, it's only really the starting point.
Yeah.
And so what you've got to do is make sure that you're there in those difficult moments. So marrying that technology with the human touch is really, really important. And so when we think about those difficult moments, it might be, a pension transfer's taking longer than, the end client might have wanted, or, there's market volatility and they need someone to pick up the phone to. And I'm sure we've all experienced those situations where you get put in a massive, call queue, or you go straight to answer machine, or the call gets dropped, or after 4 different tries, with a chatbot, maybe you get put through to someone. But with Fundment, we are really, really disciplined, and the phone gets picked up within max 35 seconds, 99% of the time. The other 1%, it will go through a voicemail and you will get a call back within an hour. And so we have really, really high standards on that front. And again, probably the only platform that marries those two so that you can get that human touch and service. And we're not just saying we give it, we actually do give it with that really, really slick technology. Because, I think if you think about the end client as well, so for us, the target market is predominantly those financial advisors, but then for their end client, these are high stakes situations, they're high trust situations. And the technology should be running super slickly, and it is. Yeah. But when they need someone, they need someone. Yeah. And so we make sure that we're there and kind of at the end of the phone.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of clients in your position, in that kind of CMO seat. And often the discussion is around client centricity and putting, the client at the heart of the decisions that you're making. And in Fundment's position, of course, it's your client's customer, and recognizing that trust, not only in the platform, but also in the services, is critical to making sure that they feel supported and that they're with the right kind of business. So when it certainly sounds like Fundment has got a clear focus on both the human side and the tech, and getting that balance right. What are the dangers if you don't, or where does that, if that balance isn't quite right, where can it go wrong?
Yeah, many places. I think inauthenticity may well be one of them. Overpromising, under-delivering, that erodes trust. Yeah. And there are signals that you can pick up on where you could potentially see that happening. So we try really, really hard to make sure that advocacy and that retention are really focused on. So it's about not just relevance, but that depth of that relationship, and that we're really listening to them as well. Yeah. And we do that through things like, NPS surveys, but also just building that one-to-one relationship, making sure that we're taking that trip to wherever it might be in the country, that we're inviting them to have those in-person connection moments
and
with
conversations,
us. And conversations. And, maybe we'll come on to this as well a little bit later around things like, content, which might be on a mass scale. But again, just thinking about that consistency, you can see very easily if something is either inconsistent or not done in kind of a human-led way, whether that be the way that you build your technology or the communications that you put out to clients. And you're just making sure that really is genuine to who you are is just more important than ever.
Yes. But harder said than done.
So hard,
and I think the exciting thing about being part of a small kind of but ambitious and growing business is you're able to sort of shape that conversation. I think it's and put the importance of that right at the heart of your marketing and your brand internally and across the network of individuals. I'm thinking people like the sales team, how important it is for them to show up and be consistent with your marketing messages and the conversations that you're having, like you say, in a content space on a one-to-one basis as well. That comes down to authenticity, like you say.
Yeah.
The next kind of topic I want to sort of dip into really is the importance of creating opportunities for those conversations to take place within your marketing plan. We know each other through having supported Rideshot supported Fundment on the Advisor Edge event, which of course took place in January, which was a really a first for Fundment and a big event that clearly was a big investment, but really an important piece of the marketing and brand strategy really, which was. In fact, rather than me talk about it, can you just kind of expand a little bit on the Advisor Edge and the thinking behind, putting on such a big event like that?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. And we loved working with Ride Shotgun on that one. So a shout out for you guys and the team. I think, and there's so much I could say on this, but really we thought of it as an experience. And just to give some context, we talked a little bit about the Fundment story, but up until now, we haven't invested heavily in marketing at Fundment, just simply because of the size and scale of the firm at the time. But what we really wanted to do was to build into something that was an experience that could go on well beyond the day. So it's not just a fun day out and a moment in time, but it's really thinking about how do you embed that and grow and get the value from that investment. Because after all, if you think about the questions that boards and management teams ask, they think, what's the ROI on that investment? How did we really build from that moment? And so for us, we'd gone from doing events, maybe 2 a year of a max 50 odd people in the room in our office to thinking about a 500 person day experience that from start to finish, both pre, during and post event, had every single detail thought about meticulously. You mentioned the brand strategy, but it's about how do we inform, but more than that, how do we really spur on action?
Yeah.
Whether that be, deepening a relationship with an existing firm or really thinking about that pipeline and how we were going to push prospective businesses through to then bring that AUM onto the platform, which at the end of the day is what I'm really focused on, as well as offering that really, really fantastic experience. And so, what I would say is rather, a lot of the time I think you see businesses start with, okay, well, what are the outputs or what's the content that we want to do? What speakers can we use on the day? But we did it back to front, which was thinking about the outcomes. So what do we really want to drive? What do we want people to think, feel, say and do not just at the end of the day, but really through those months and years to come off the back of a really memorable moment like that. So it takes being in the detail as well as really thinking about that bigger picture. And the teams will hear me talk a lot about, this element of surprise and delight as well. And that was really fun. And after all, right, it needs to be fun. But I think we had a lot of joy and fun whilst we were really thinking about how can we really wow.
Yeah.
And again, whether that be through the speakers, whether it be through the brand video reel that we did at the end to really generate the excitement and a bit of FOMO to some extent as well for those that weren't able to make it on the day.
Yeah. I mean, it was a massive brand moment, if you like. And you know, obviously I've seen a lot of the work and the footage. I wasn't unfortunately there on the day, but the you know, the gravitas behind that and the conversations that created, particularly across the social platforms that I noticed on LinkedIn, for example, it definitely presented that, you know, that the fact that if you weren't there, you've missed out on something, particularly in that sector, the level of the speakers that you had at that event. You touched on ROI. These things, these big brand moments are always difficult ones to measure because the effect of it is often a slower but longer burn, if you like. You know, it has a greater effect over time. Couple of questions really. How have you gone about measuring it to date, and based on the objectives to start with, and I'm just thinking about the kind of the stakeholder management with the owner of the business and that kind of the C-suite, if you like, because it's a big investment. How do you demonstrate that investment was how do you convince them, and how do you demonstrate that was worthwhile?
Yeah, and that job continues on for now, which we'll come on to. And partly that's a self-made problem, right? You know, that's what you want. You want to have built something where people are still asking, you know, how the value's coming from there. I think the biggest and maybe most important thing to say is the relationship with sales, or we call it distribution in our case, but getting that right and getting that alignment from the get-go is absolutely key. And, you know, often you will see those teams working in absolute silos. But where I am today, I feel really fortunate that myself and the head of sales distribution are working in lockstep together with our teams, really thinking about, you know, how do we, build something that's stand out, that's meaningful, and that's really going to generate that value and growth. So we made sure every step of the way that the internal communication between us was really high, that we understood the commercial and business goals and who we needed to get into the room, what was really going to pack a punch and have influence on the day. Similar thing, thinking about speakers. And then we built a joint commercial dashboard.
Right, okay.
So some of that was thinking about sales qualified leads, some of it was thinking about marketing influence pipeline. But at the end of the day, it was all about, again, growth, AUM on the platform. So, you know, in the very early days post-event, you know, we had a meticulous plan lined up for the following morning, and, you know, no rest for the wicked, especially when you're in marketing with those events, as you'll know, up very early the next day, really thinking about how we got that content turned around really slick into people's inboxes. We had different journeys mapped for whether you'd come to the event as a prospect or a client, or you hadn't managed to come to the event at all, and had segmented all of that beautifully to then really think about how we could, you know, map that ROI. And then from the following Monday, again, we were reporting out as a team, and we're still doing it today, although obviously not on a weekly basis, and it's moving more to quarterly. But I think especially in the early days, like for a company like ours, where you're building traction, you're creating the case for marketing, you have to be fairly disciplined about building that, about putting it in front of the right people. And it's a slow burn. It doesn't happen overnight, especially, again, in a B2B world where financial planners, advisory firms, they're not making decisions overnight to move to a new platform. There's usually a pain point or, you know, a difficult moment in time that might trigger that, and it will take months for them to do that. So again, tracking those relationships, really thinking about how we're influencing and having an impact is really key.
I think that it's startup mentality almost, isn't it? There's a real kind of I've seen over the years kind of there's often real tension between sales and marketing, and you often find that some organizations are very sales led, some are fewer are very marketing led. It's fair to say, but often, particularly in big organizations, that the relationship between those two departments it can be fractured. It's certainly siloed. And the great thing about, being in a smaller business, and of course, Ride Shotgun is a smaller business and a founder-led business, is that, you can join up those things really well because it's smaller teams, it's fewer people, and that those relationships between marketing and sales, if you can make them work and you get together at the beginning, like you say, and create that dashboard of this is what we want to achieve, and you're both joined up on that, that's a really smart move and probably something that, is an enviable position for many people to be in. Have you seen, is that something, would you agree with that? There's often that kind of friction or disconnect between sales and marketing?
Yeah, there is. And I've certainly experienced that in various places throughout my career. And sometimes it's healthy to have a little bit of competition and tension, but really I think sometimes it's also down to a lack of understanding. And we know, being in this space, that everybody thinks that they're a marketer or have a perception and a view on it. And so you've got to be able to play the long game and also be patient and think of your role as being a bit of a player coach within the organization, and being very headstrong and resilient with helping the business understand the value that marketing can bring together with sales. And explaining why certain things can and can't happen. And I think when you start to see that work really well and you're in unison, it's an amazing feeling. And actually, one of the things, going back to the Advisor Edge in January, that Nicole and Stephen and the team will know I was probably most excited about was how the employees would feel and that internal sense of pride when they went through that entrance with this incredible, live reel going on through that tunnel. And the same is true as we think about the website that the new website that we'll imminently launch. It's almost, obviously you want the your target market to feel excited about it, but actually you want your employees to feel thrilled about being part of something. And you can't do that in isolation. Marketing can't be a function in an ivory tower. It has to be embedded within the organization. You have to spend a lot of time building those relationships. And
I think people often not overlook that, but don't appreciate that. And when you're in a senior role, is the stakeholder management and how you have to kind of build relationships and manage relationships and expectations, around you, not only at your level, but right through the business, and creating a brand or and a marketing initiative that your team are proud of, and importantly will create them to promote it and them to have conversations about it, is really that's when you've done a good job, really, because that's when people are having conversations on that level with their peers and their customers. That's when they can really kind of get those help support those marketing objectives and get those over the line, really.
Agreed. And I think data is also the great equalizer as well. So, again, marketing can often be seen as fairly subjective and, less, maybe more objective in sales or whatever. But actually, how do you make both, again, those shared targets and really clear, but also the expectation from other teams around what you require to be successful as well. It's not, marketing stops and ends here and then it's over to sales. It's, really how we, making sure that we're embedding that long tail together.
And appreciation of that.
Yeah.
The next kind of topic I wanted to kind of cover off really is one we've spoken at length about previously is of course AI and the role of AI in not only within client organizations but also agencies and importantly, I guess the relationship between the two, really. But first of all, from a kind of from a client side perspective, the role of AI, arguably is it's making it easier to create more content at pace and much more efficiently. We've just been talking about creating a brand moment, which is hugely kind of connected to the human side of things, really. I'm interested in I guess two things: your thoughts on how AI will continue to influence marketing, but really importantly, the role of the human side of things and within all of that.
Yeah, sure. I love this topic because I love learning about it. And obviously it's everywhere at the moment. And you're right. I think the great irony is that, suddenly you can do everything, but equally which is great in many respects because it enables anybody to produce content as an example, but it equally makes it really challenging to stand out and get that cut through. And so all of that possibility is great, but possibility without prioritization is just absolute chaos. So for me, I'm thinking about how do I really bring AI into my into my workflow. So it might enable me to get to decisions more quickly, but it's not the thing making the decision. I, as the human, am the person then making the decision. And, where you've got a lean team in particular, it's obviously helpful to think about, what do you insource? What do you outsource? What do you use agencies for? Where can you bring AI into your tech stack?
And how do you see? You mentioned agencies. How do you see the role of agencies in the in the future, if you like?
Yeah. Again, I think a really interesting question, especially as you think about, I don't know, for example, Mad Men, and how we think, oh, that was so long ago, and how things have changed. It might have taken 6 to 12 months or whatever to get to a campaign, and maybe now we're in a world where it might take 8 weeks. I think in a couple of years' time, it will be, completely unimaginable. So I do think that it's changing. But the thing for me, and again, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about working with Ride Shotgun is almost before we even get to discuss the brief in full, you've challenged it. It's that precision and that clarity of thought that I think an agency partner, if you get the right one, can really help you with that strategic thinking. But also, I think because you've got so many other clients, you tend to have that purview where, I'm maniacally focused on my world and my business and how I grow it, and obviously trying to look outside, but you're the challenger, you've got the clarity of thought and helping to really sharpen and hone that how the brand plays out across various different channels. We have we again have lots of conversations around this with other clients and other agency owners, and around the role of the agency, ultimately is that kind of the window on the world, if you like. We do have the benefit of working across lots of other clients and lots of other sectors and industries, really. And the appreciation from the clients that we work with, that's the role that we want the agency to come in with new ideas. And with regards to AI, we're obviously operationalizing AI throughout our business in how we go about doing our business. But we have obviously a lot of experience in how other businesses are adopting it. And in these early stages, these kind of mid stages now of AI adoption, it's good to be able to kind of understand how other organizations are, kind of tackling things, how they're doing things differently, where the real value is. I thought that's quite an interesting point around that. Ultimately, the role of the agency is to come in and help work out how to tackle the problem in the first instance, creating the content and putting the campaign in action. They're the things that you can, do at speed and at scale, and that's not where the value is anymore. It's the value is in those early conversations and the challenging the brief and bringing new ideas to the table. So I'm hopeful that there is still a role for the agency for many years to come. Absolutely, I completely concur with you on that one. Yeah.
So as AI becomes more accessible and table stakes, if you like, as far as an organization is concerned, are experienced marketers standing out more, and how are they behaving, and how are they using AI to impact their brand and their marketing more positively?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things on this, and one is slightly tangential, but I think important to the point, which is as a CMO or a senior leader, I don't think you can outsource your AI strategy and have others in your team learn how to be AI experts. you don't have to be a technologist, but I think you really got to take responsibility for testing and learning week in, week out, and understanding that AI landscape and how you can use it to your advantage. So I think that's the first thing to say. I think the second is the trap with AI, I think, is just constantly producing more of the same. And actually, the restraint comes from using it less or knowing where to use it really, really well. And so making sure that you're not just putting generic content out there, because that's not going to differentiate the brand in any way, shape or form. So I think back to your question, you've got to have leaders or, people of any stage on the team, like really be able to use that human judgment and think about, again, is this going to drive the commercial goals of the business? Is it going to make us distinctive and stand out? Yeah. Is it going to be impactful versus just making us present? Yeah. And those two things aren't necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
And also having the courage. I think these days in particular, you really need to look for people on your team that have the courage to be able to stay the course and do the things that are right for the brand versus things that might be kind of easier to do because there's some tool out there that enable you to do it, but very quickly you can go off piste and become unstuck.
And that's the temptation, right? And certainly from what I'm seeing is that the temptation is it's easier to create more stuff. So therefore, let's create more stuff, really. Yeah. And it's that, like you say, that human judgment and saying, well, what's really going to make the difference? Where are we going to invest our effort? And prioritizing those things. And back to the point around we were talking earlier about, it is important to be showing up across as many channels as possible and showing, and really, really importantly, showing up consistently, but making sure that there is a balance in investing in those big brand moments to really stand out, differentiate, interrupt those conversations that your competitors aren't doing, if you like.
Yeah, agreed. And a lot of this comes down to customer insight. It's really about knowing your customers inside out, and whether that's through, surveys that you do, insights driven programs, persona level work, the one-to-one meetings, making sure that on the back end, whether that's through Salesforce or some other system, that you as a whole are capturing that 360 client view of, where do the clients expect us to show up? What are they reading? What are they seeing? Yeah. What do they need from us? How do we predict their future needs?
Yeah.
Again, just to really bring that relevance home.
Listening to that audience is critical. I think marketing is two-way. Here's our proposition and the messaging that we want to be sharing with you and why we're different. But help us understand how that's landing and how you feel about that, and based on what you're hearing from elsewhere, is that really cutting through and making sense of that? And I think that comes back to that relationship, I guess, between sales and marketing, because the sales function is often privileged to be having those conversations, if you like, particularly on a one-to-one basis, I'm thinking. But it's that, taking the time to listen to help inform the decisions rather than just continuing to blanket kind of, content and messaging relentlessly despite any of that.
Yeah, agreed. And I think there's a temptation as well to think of, target audience as a homogenous group. And again, just that segmentation piece and really testing assumptions.
Yeah.
But, I'm sort of laughing to myself because we're lucky because we do have a very vocal group, both internally as well as on the external side. So they're not shy of telling us what they like and what they don't like. And that definitely helps to hone the messaging.
You touched on testing then. So how do you kind of just expand on that a little bit? How do you go about that testing process and how that then informs future strategies?
Yeah, so we, often will go to not just advocates, but, a broad kind of user group base to test, whether it be things like the upcoming website launch that we're doing, or it might be client testimonials or new crazy ideas that we might be having, again, to try and stand out. Yeah. And we can do that in a qualitative as well as a quantitative way, but just to make sure that something's going to land before we put it out there. But I think at the top of the podcast, we were also talking about pivoting fast, and it's okay to make mistakes, provided that they're in a contained, hopefully kind of small way, and then pivot and learn from that and hone the kind of plan as you go as well. So we're always asking for that feedback and that insight. I think the trick is making sure that you're also thinking about it such that one voice doesn't dominate all as well. And when you've got a slightly smaller target audience, that's easier to do. So, those internal discussions around that is also really important.
Yeah. I think your point around pivot there as well, it's again, and the growth mindset of kind of startup or owner-led businesses that have grown quickly is again something that I've only ever really worked in smaller organizations, so it feels very natural to me. But working with big organizations, it's a real challenge to adopt that way of thinking and acknowledge that failing fast, as they say, isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing, and then changing course and being agile and doing something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends as well, I think, the market and where you are in the world. And there's a different view on that as well, and how quickly you can pivot too. But ultimately, it's a culture and a DNA thing around how fast you can move.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess final one for me, I do have some kind of quick fire questions at the end that I'll share with you. But based on what we've just been discussing, is there one thing that people listening to this podcast should sort of take away from this? And what would that be?
So many things.
Okay.
But I would, really purposefully decide where to invest your time and budget. And what most of us do, because we're only human, is default rather than really actively decide. And I genuinely think that is a decision that you need to make day on day, week on week, month on month, and versus, annual cycles or whatever. And be really, really purposeful. Because I think, whether you're in a world where you're looking at annual planning cycles or quarterly or whatever, the temptation is to say, we'll do what we did last year, what we did last month or last quarter, with a 10% tweak here or there, whether that be, budget, time, or some other measure. And what I think we really need to do is think about what are those behaviors that we're really trying to change? What's the dial that we're really trying to shift within the business? Where's the untapped opportunity in the market? And again, I think that takes being really close to your CEO, your CFO, your peers around the business, as well as the sales team. So what's happening on the ground, being really, really curious and interested in that. This is the financial advice world is new for me, as I've mentioned, coming from, banking, technology. So I've got to ask those questions day in, day out, even if sometimes I'm kind of feeling embarrassed about it, because my job is to help the company grow and really find those opportunities, but also build the depth of relationship with the existing advisors that we've got on the platform. And ultimately, I'd rather that we do 3 things brilliantly versus 10 things adequately, because the ROI on brilliant is way higher than a big kind of volume play.
I love that. It's really interesting. It's almost like an agile approach to marketing, if you like.
Yeah.
And you think about the process that a CMO goes through when you're kind of presenting or pitching for budget within an organization, and here is my plan, and you get that kind of commitment from wherever that might be, the CEO or procurement, and that's your designated budget to do those things. And then lots of marketers and brands just click straight into that BAU way of doing things, and either you've not then got enough money or time to invest in those big brand moments, or you're only really learning so much. And I guess it's quite an enviable position where we can say there are some milestones here that but ultimately we want to understand how the marketing is impacting behaviors and how that's aligning to our our growth objective, which is quite fascinating.
Yeah, agreed. If anyone wants to remember one thing, peanut butter.
Okay.
Got to avoid peanut butter approach, which is just, spreading it across everything, doing it, whether it's content or your other activities, thinking about your budget in that way, it's not going to move the needle. It's not really going to, move you on. And by the way, I love peanut butter.
I was going to say peanut butter's quite
absolutely
a good thing,
love it. Nanny life all the way, the crunchy one. But
I'm more smooth. I don't like it crunchy.
No, you've got to go crunchy. I'll get you some.
Okay.
But you do really, and it's hard, right? Back to this courage point and the bravery. You've got to have the conviction to say, right, I'm willing to take a risk here.
Yeah.
Mostly backed by data, but also experience and some level of, gut feel to say this is going to be the right path and we're going to stay it.
Love that. Great. Yeah. Peanut butter. I'll try and remember that.
There we go.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation. And I know you mentioned, the work that Ride Shotgun had done on the Advisor Edge. And I just wanted to kind of just also say it's been great working with you and the team. It's been a real pleasure working with the team and on such an exciting brand and opportunity and delivering such a big event. And we've got quite a lot in the pipeline as well. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with you.
Ditto. Yeah, we've absolutely loved it. And we, like we said, have a lot of fun along the way, but also producing, really excellent game-changing work.
It is. Great. Thank you. I've got some quick fire questions that we can just ping through. I know we've covered a lot of these things off, so I imagine some of the answers will be fairly short, but it may create some further conversation. So they are, if you could describe marketing right now in one word, what would that be? Or one word for marketing right now, if you like.
I'm going to caveat it to say effective marketing.
Okay.
And that's proof.
Okay.
So if you can't prove it, don't do it.
Don't do it.
So there's lots of claims out there, but you've got to really think about what's your social proof? How can you back it up to building trust and differentiation?
Okay. And looking perhaps beyond your sector, but in the big wide world, if you like, what other brands or what brand do you think is quietly doing great work? Who do you look to and admire?
I love what M&S is doing at the moment. And, obviously a well-known brand. Yeah. I tried to come up with some geeky cycling or running brand that I love. And there are a few, but they're much more focused on product. But I think if you look at M&S, which essentially has been a bit of a burning platform for the last 20 odd years, and I think they had a new CEO come in 2022 or something like that, and really think about how do we keep the magic but modernize the rest. Yeah. And for me, it's front of mind because where our office is in Fitzrovia is really near the new M&S Superstore, which is amazing. And I've noticed every time I've been in there recently, the sonic branding, the way every single member of staff, again, offers that consistent, personal store experience. And it's got that premium feel, but, a more manageable price point. I think their food stores have always been pretty good, but it's just remarkable what aligning that leadership team and that vision, I can only assume has done for that. And I was looking up their share price. I think it's like tripled in the last few years. So, that's really, again, the power of marketing. And I'm sure their CMO is reminding them of that.
The M&S brand is fascinating. It's kind of been, I think back to my days at university, it was a topic of conversation in various kind of lectures then. And they've been on a real roller coaster. But I definitely agree. I think I go in there a lot more often. I think I'm probably wearing head to toe in M&S today as well, actually. So
love that. And the best blueberry you can get as well.
Apart from my Nike Airs. But what would you say is the most overused phrase in the industry?
Authentic. I think if you've got to say it, you're not it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you've got to be. That's it. If you're having to again. What's the word? Explicitly say that we are authentic. It kind of it implies that potentially one is not.
Yeah.
It's like,
I know. I think
it's how you act and behave.
Yes, really. Exactly. Yeah. Ecosystem's another. There's a lot more jargon out there. I try not to use too much of it, but I know in previous roles, sometimes it's hard to find the right word.
M&S is a great example of that, actually. That authenticity and at every touch point showing up, and it's just feeling unmistakably M&S.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's not just food, it's M&S food, or it's not just whatever that might be. It does feel like that right now, which is good.
Yeah.
One thing we need more of in marketing.
Brands that have the courage to do less, and the conviction to really have impact with what they do. So hard, especially when you've got a lot of internal pressure and FOMO, as we've talked about, and, wanting to be all places at all times, back to the peanut butter again. But, really thinking about, is this going to add value, in our case, to the advisor or the end client? And if it's not, really not doing that. So prioritizing what you are doing and doing it amazingly well.
Yeah, great. And then one more, one thing that you'd happily see less of.
I think this goes back to where we started, which is just the constant treadmill of content.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel it too, but you get bombarded with your WhatsApp groups, with your emails, and just more and more opting out, blocking.
Yeah.
And there is just so much noise out there. It becomes really, really overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think a lot about that for my kids as well, growing up in that world. I know you and I've talked a bit about that in the past, but so there's just too much. And I think it's only gonna get worse.
Yeah.
So again, thinking about kind of pulling back from that, but also just on a personal note, how do you want to manage that?
Yeah.
And tune in to the channels that are going to help you to learn or achieve what you want, and kind of in your life goals as well as your career goals.
Yeah. It is quite overwhelming, isn't it? To just kind of filter out what is meaningful. I'm finding increasingly, channels like email just doesn't work anymore, because people are just kind of, they need a break from the inbox and a break from the noise. And I think about both my work inbox and my personal inbox. It's just it's impossible to keep on top of. So I guess back to that point earlier, it's creating those for brands, creating those moments to really interrupt and stand out and make a difference, do something differently.
Yeah, and that's again full circle back to the human interaction point, isn't it? Because hopefully that
knowing your audience.
Yeah, knowing your audience. Yeah, and that hopefully won't ever be replaced. Getting that time to build a bit of magic and that depth of relationship.
Yeah. Elly, thank you very much. That's been a really enjoyable conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time out. I know how busy you are, so thank you very much from me for doing this today. It is much appreciated.
Thank you very much for having me. I loved it.
Thank you.
Cheers.